Charles Joseph. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So, I've read about your story, and you have a remarkable story. The art that you've been able to produce is incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
So, this episode is going to be very intense. We're going to get into some intense topics. But I just want to start with your inspiration behind the art that you've been able to produce.
All right.
So, what's been your biggest inspiration behind the art, and how did you get started?
By watching other artists and my grandparents, great grandparents, were very cultural people.
So your art is very influenced in the culture, and
Through family and through other artists, yes.
so tell me more about that. Was it something that you wanted to follow in the footsteps of, or was there something else in the art? And what inspires your pieces every day? Because I know that you work every single day, and how has your art been able to, or let me rephrase my words, how have you grown as an artist?
Oh, geez. At, at first, it was because coming out of residential school, so it was
Hmm.
put away for a while. Like being cultural, not just an artist, but being cultural as a native person.
Yeah.
Um, because of what had happened to me as a child, I sort of like went into the drinking and drugging world for a while and got lost for a while, and then I was really grateful to have a second chance in life to be able to to be able to see my great grandparents still
Hmm.
here in this world and my grandparents to continue teaching me what they were going through and what it was like to be cultural and how it made them feel.
Would you?
So it was just right. It made me feel like,
Mhm.
okay, how could I explain this in a way that, okay, when you're feeling sad and grieving for somebody
Yeah.
that you love and they're gone. So when I'm doing cultural work or in the ceremony house, that gives me a feeling of just remembering that person in life and what was left behind for me to understand and use from the teaching. So when I think about each person that I've grown to love and understand in my life, I use a lot of that through my meditation.
Mm.
And that's what gives me my strength to carry on as who I am today.
Would you say that you've found comfort in the art from your experiences as a
Not
child?
not just the art. Most of all, it's the use of the masks, the use of the songs and the dances that come along with it.
Hmm.
Like all of that goes hand in hand with making me feel really good, making myself feel like I belong to this tribe. I belong to this family. I belong. I I I feel really. I'm grateful that I'm able and allowed to be able to carve and speak my language. Every day when I get up and meditate and thank the people that taught me this in my meditation, and to try to carry it on the way they were teaching me, so that when my kids come in here, I say the same words that were said to me in that comfort way, and to the patience they had for me, because
Hmm.
being a little kid, I was pretty touchy.
So a lot of the work that you do has to do with facial expressions and creating masks, and the art or the inspiration behind those. Is there something specific to each piece that you do?
Yeah, there is a dance and the story that goes in hand, like I was saying. But sometimes, like in the last little while, I've lost a few family members that passed away, right?
Hmm.
So, in to regards to our family passing away like that, like for instance, my son and my daughter just passed away.
Hmm.
So I have not been able to sit in here and carve, but I come in here and meditate and grieve
Right.
for them so that I can understand what I'm grieving for and why I'm grieving, and so that the teachings to me is that I can listen to our cultural grieving songs and think about them, and then think about what I'm to do next with the ones that are still here.
Hmm.
So that I'm not stuck grieving, not stuck feeling heartbroken, and I won't be able to come in here and work anymore because I'm grieving so hard.
Yeah.
And to be able to just hang on to the positive side of those my young son and my young daughter's life while they were here, and to understand, that the spirit world wanted them, so they're gone, and just
Hmm.
so I have to look at myself so that when I'm drawing and carving with my children, when they want to come in here and paint, I've got to allow myself to have time for grieving also. So I
Yeah.
give myself time in the morning before I wake them up for school. I'll get up like 5 and 6 in the morning and come in here and do my process. And then I could carry on my day without feeling heavy and negative. And then I could sit and think about what they did when they were carving, and there's things like when this happens,
Yeah.
because you just don't know when stuff like this happens. So a lot of times I'll just put a candle on and smudge and just sit quietly and think about them.
Because I read also that your house burnt down, or an outhouse that you had that.
Yeah, my house and shop burned down in Williams Lake. Geez, that's funny you say that because I was a year ago today. We moved into this house here,
Mhm.
actually, a little bit over a year ago, almost 2 years now. Okay. And my wife passed away 2 weeks before my house burned down and my shop in Williams Lake.
Yeah. So your wife,
So,
your.
yeah, that was pretty painful because that was in January, right?
Mhm.
She passed away in January. We sent her to the spirit world on January the 9th.
Wow.
Right, and then 2 weeks after that, I think 2 or 3 weeks after that, our house burned down. So we were homeless for a while, and yeah, so and then at the same time we're still grieving on top of losing our house.
And during that time, you're grieving, trying to rebuild, but because not only your house burns down, but also the art that you've created, right?
There are lots of it. I
Eh,
lost two two totem poles, 10 feet and 7.5 feet. That were just being going to get shipped away. I had a few carvings that were Dr. Jordan Peterson's carvings that I had already wrapped up and ready for shipping. They were going to be leaving on a Monday, and the house
Yeah.
burned down on Friday. So I lost a lot of bit of art and
Mhm.
lost all my tools. and a lot of old artifacts that I had from my great grandparents, like carving tools that I never used anymore, but hung on to them just for the memories of how they were teaching me.
And what keeps you motivated after so much loss? And what like actually keeps you going? And because not only, was your house burnt down, but also your life's work.
Um, I wish my kids were up. It's them. It's the family, my children. The love and the strength they have and how much they show it to me is what keeps me going every day. Waking up and seeing that big smile and say, "Love you, Dad, with all my heart."
Yeah.
Wow. That's what makes me feel good every day. It's through them, through the power of their love and power of seeing the true love coming from them. Because there's nobody teaches the little kid that.
Mhm.
You show each other's that kind of love, and it gets shown back to you.
Tell me a little bit more about your early experiences and the influence that those experiences had when you're in residential school.
Well, in there is nothing good to talk about. It's after residential school is where when my life was sort of restarted over.
Hmm.
In there, there's nothing good to talk about. So I'm not even going to go there because it's just you know you can think about all the negative stuff and all the abuses that are written down in this world. It
Hmm.
happened in there, right? So and it wasn't good. It wasn't a good scene. It wasn't as a child because there was nobody there that you could run to for support or help or hide behind because you're getting hurt.
Hmm.
All these different abuses.
Yeah.
Like I said, you could name them off, and there may be even some new ones that aren't even out there yet that have happened in there. But yeah, I'm just wanted to say to all the other survivors out there, love you guys. Love all of you
Hmm.
for being the strength you guys have today to carry on your guys' lives. And it's tough because it never goes away. Those thoughts and feelings about what happened as a child. It's just how you deal with it on an everyday basis. And once again, I have to thank Dr. Jordan Peterson and his family for the support that they give me when he has time to talk with me about where I'm at today
Hmm.
in grieving or in my from being working on myself from being in residential school.
Yeah. Because a lot of us, we have traumatic experiences and we say that we grew up in traumatic experiences. But listening to your story does not compare with the experiences that a lot of us have suffered. But at the end, it's having that support system uh, that is necessary. You've
Very important. Very important. It's important because when you're alone and the cycle comes along
Mhm.
and that dates at the time that I have been injured or
Mhm.
abused in any form or way, and you don't have somebody there to help you out of that misery, first thing that comes to mind is suicide.
Yeah.
I don't care about myself. I don't love myself. So why am I here?
Mhm.
Or you turn to drinking, drugging, or like I say, suicide because you feel like no matter what you do in life, you start to believe what you hear that you're not worthy. You're just you're a filthy native dog, and so you get brainwashed almost from hearing that every day as a child. So you almost start to believe that you're not worthy.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the stuff that we tell ourselves that we just can't do anything or do anything right.
Listening with my great grandparents, I always go back to my great grandparents because that's who I grew up with.
Hmm.
And my grandparents, my dad's mom, dad, and my great grandparents were really patient, and they were really, one thing that I seen lots was the sharing, the sharing of their love, the sharing of their knowledge and their time. There was no time. It was, if you wanted to learn something, they would teach it to you till you understood what you were there for.
And what would you say was the biggest piece of advice that they gave you?
Was to let your children be children.
Hmm. That.
Allow them to be kids. Allow them to have fun. Allow them. Don't keep saying no
Hmm.
and explain what no means. Don't just say no. Don't do that. Allow it to happen and express why you're saying no to them, so you understand why it's no.
And
Those
now.
are the things that I remember. Is just because I didn't get taught how to be a father in residential school. I didn't get taught how to be a brother or uncle or anything. It was when you're at home, that's where the teaching was. And that's why I keep saying I was very grateful for them to still be there when I got back home to teach me a little bit before they went to the spirit world. And the
Hmm.
rest I had to just understand and learn on my own after they were gone. Because I was
Nowadays.
too ashamed to ask somebody else. I felt funny. I felt embarrassed, I guess,
Hmm.
if I was trying to reach out to outside family about knowledge about being parent.
It seems that a lot of children don't get that opportunity, and they are expected to just mature on their own. And I don't know if it's the parents' fault or if it's outside influences, because a lot of children nowadays, I think as it ever was, they've been just expected to know things on their own. And some parents nowadays are very neglectful with a lot of distractions going on, and they don't give the children the attention needed to actually become good adults. And I think that's going to be a problem in the future. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's like that right now.
Hmm.
Because when you look at what happens at schools, even they
Hmm.
bring guns there, they bring bad stuff there,
Hmm.
and they intimidate these people by being in a gang. If you're not part of them, then you're going to get hurt from them.
Hmm.
Right? And you see it everywhere. It doesn't, all over. It doesn't matter where you go over here, it's there. If it's not that, it's drugs.
Hmm.
And a lot of our younger generation is I'm choking up here because of
Hmm.
that. Are ODing from that, and there's nothing we can do.
Hmm.
I wish there was some way we could, you know, make our younger generation understand that those drugs aren't, they're pretty lethal, and it's tough to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. I've lost people that I know to drugs. I mean, some of them are still alive, but what do you call life when their life revolves around drugs?
Hmm. That's what I mean. You see it everywhere. Like when you go downtown Courtney here, it's sad to see how many people are homeless and on that stuff because that's nothing else in life. I guess I'm not really sure. I can't answer that for them. I wish
Hmm.
I could, but I don't have answers for those people. I only have answers for what I'm doing. And I have to look out for what I'm doing so that my kids could see and have something to talk about when I'm not in this world in a good way. Instead
Hmm.
of saying, I don't know my dad, I don't know my mom. I want them to remember me. I want them to remember their mom and their late brother and sister. I want them to remember us in a good way, not that because we weren't in their lives, they only know of me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a balancing act between growing resentment towards someone for them telling you what's good from bad, and actually acknowledging that they're just looking out for your best interest. And a lot of us don't learn about that till later in life and realize that they just wanted what was best for us, but we didn't really see it at the moment.
But when I grew up with my great grandparents, it's like I said, it's like I was reborn when I left residential school.
Hmm.
Reborn meaning that I was able to speak my language still. I was allowed to watch them carve out without looking out for my back to get
Yeah.
spanked or whipped or something. And the other one is, the big one is our cultural food.
Hmm.
The food that we eat that doesn't, it's not in the stores. And that's the big thing today is, you got all these fast food places and it's getting people sick too, you know, and
Hmm.
in bad heart attacks and high blood pressure and stuff like that happening because of those stuff.
Yeah.
But like I say, there's what grandparents always talk about that watch for the change. It's going to happen really fast, and it has since my childhood. Like now, I understand what they meant about our language changing really fast because of the things that are like what we're on right now.
Hmm.
The computer, the cell phones, and all these new gadgets that are out there. That wasn't there, so there isn't a language for it.
Yeah.
Right, so now we have to create this new language to accommodate what's here today.
Hmm. And with that, it's something that wasn't around, say, 20 years ago. And the technology is just changing super fast, and we just need to adapt to it. It could be good or it could be bad. With this platform, we're trying to spread information, but this platform could also be used for evil.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. Um.
I just hope not, because I'm not out to try to hurt nobody
Mhm.
any way. I just hopefully, you know, if my healing journey helps one person, at least it helped one person today, and that's me,
Mhm.
right? So, and and because of that, I'm not hurting as much as I should be. But
Mhm.
if you seen me a few days ago, I probably you wouldn't recognize me because I've been crying and hurt so bad because of the losses we've had in the last few months. And
Mhm.
so I was grieving for a while. So, and I was really glad that the podcast was today, not like yesterday even, because
Mhm.
I still not feeling really good about myself,
Mhm.
but working on it. So yeah, grieving's a tough thing to deal with, and it never gets easy. It never,
Yeah.
there's no such thing as get over it. You just got to go through it. Got to go
Yeah.
through the pain and hope you come out on the other side feeling a bit better for self.
Hmm. It's one of those things that you just learn to live with it.
Yeah. So my grandfather said this to me when I was a young boy, probably about 6, 7 years old. He says, "You know what, son? The first day of your breath is the closest to your death."
Hmm.
I didn't understand it right away, but as I grew older, I knew what he meant after. Lots of good teachings that, and a lot of the stuff that I when they're in my dreams, they teach me still, but they never ever answer. I have to learn the answer. So I'm glad for that though, because it gives me a chance to think about what I'm doing in life
Hmm.
and what I do better.
And would you also say that you use art as a way to keep your mind busy and try to cope with grievances?
It helps me. It helps me not be in the outside world. It helps me think about why it makes me feel good.
Hmm.
It reminds me of when I'm dancing in the mask or if I'm at a ceremony house when I pick up a knife like this.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there carving on this horn for a mask.
Mm.
And then my mind's right away, it goes to what that mask's going to look like at the end result. In my mind, I could see this thing finished in my mind. And how could I use it? And how am I going to present it to make it the best that it came from here? From my heart and my mind, and how I perceive to see it and how I want it out there.
So when you begin a piece, do you have an idea of what you're going to create, or you just go and think of the idea as you go along?
Before, a lot of times it's just a lot of it was just what I was thinking of. What I want to do today. Okay, I
Hmm.
want to make an eagle mask, or I want to make a plaque,
Hmm.
or a talking stick, or something challenging that I've never tried before.
Hmm.
In the earlier days, it was just sit and watch how the artist before me how they would hold their knife and what knife was used for what's carving
Hmm.
and how they sharpened them and how they looked after their knives and tools, how they babied it like it was, that's their money maker, so they looked after it,
Hmm.
like that's their favorite tool, so they looked after it at the best that they could, so they can continue using it until it was no longer be able to use it. So I have some old knives that I have at the other shop there that was
Hmm.
at that fire. I try to revive them, but they're no more good. But it just gives me reminders of why I love to carve.
Hmm.
And when I'm sitting there and the, sometimes I think, hey, I created something today, man. I made this. But you know what? It was already done, right?
Hmm.
From our elders before me. Every once in a while, I think, oh yeah, I invented this, but I did. And then you find out, oh hey, that mask, oh, I've seen that somewhere before. Right?
So the influences that you have are from the past and from the ancestors that created these pieces, and now you're able to go and recreate the pieces that they once imagined.
Yeah, and I love that I'm allowed to do that. Before, when I was a child, I wasn't allowed. Right? We
Um,
weren't allowed to be who we are.
mhm.
Right? And the sad part about that is that I lost a lot of friends and family through that era of our lives. And it goes right back to, like I say, suicide and
Mm-hmm.
drinking. And it was a big thing because, like I say, you lose your soul. When you lose your soul, you don't care about yourself no more. And when you stop to caring about yourself, and that's when it doesn't matter how destructive you are to yourself, because you don't feel you don't even feel the pain or the understanding of pain anymore because you just live it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you don't. So this is one of the things that I had to really work on was retraining my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was one of the toughest things that I ever had to work on. That part in my journey here was to retrain my brain to not look backwards in my that childhood of my problem that I lived in. Because it made me feel miserable. It made me feel angry inside, angry outside. So I had to ask myself this: why do I keep picking that up? Why do I always go back there and feel like that? Why do I? It's not because I like it. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
it. So I had to look at how can I let that go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I went, and again, it goes right back to my children. We went to a native treatment center called a Ninkaini, and it helped me understand retraining my brain meant and how to start with it. And then I learned through other people that were doing it and through Jordan Peterson how to continue on working on that part of my life. And I still do it today.
Mm-hmm.
Is to retrain my brain to not think about what happened in my childhood so that I'm not feeling like sick to my stomach about that or feeling ashamed of myself.
Yeah.
It's not my pain. It was put on me. It wasn't mine to begin with.
Yeah. Some people tend to get trapped in their early um, experiences and their early childhood and just relive those experiences and just feel like they can't advance. So, retraining your brain to the future and to what you can accomplish is very important.
Really important to me too, because not only does it make me feel good,
Hmm.
like I always go back to I'll do this a million times a day. Go back to my children that I love the most.
Yeah.
That's the stem of my happiness is through them, and they give me reason to wake up every morning and see their smiling faces, and then to grow with what they're learning each day from school or at home here.
Hmm.
When you ask me questions like, "What's that knife used for?" or "How come you're always using that kind of wood?" Those are good questions. A lot of people my age or a little younger than me don't even ask those kind of questions. You know what I mean? Like I tried to
Yeah.
explain that, and these kids ask, seem, and their friends out, at school, they seem to ask the right questions. Like because they want to know, right? Because
Hmm.
their brains are always working. So, and that's the same with art. When I'm carving, my brain's always working on overtime, looking at the end result in my mind,
Hmm.
right? No matter if it takes a week or months to see it finished, at least I got it on the go. And I'm
Hmm.
doing my process that way. And then when I sit down in here again and I meditate and thank my forefathers, my grandparents, my dad, and them for the lessons that they left behind for me to practice, and I start carving.
Yeah. So, I started this podcast. I had something kind of like what you were talking about. I went to school. School was not very pleasant. I was not a good student, but I felt that I had to go through school. I did that. You know, as I said, I wasn't a very good student, but I got through it. I went through school. I went to college. I got a degree in finance. I worked in marketing for a bit, but I was always in this cycle of doing things of what was expected of me to do. Now, I began this podcast because finally I wanted to do something that I actually wanted to do and not feeling like I needed to fit a certain mold. And that's helped me ever since I started to realize that I don't have to do certain things for the expectations of certain people, that I could just do something that I want. I mean, that's helped me personally.
Mm-hmm.
And
I tell you why it works for me too is because being truthful and honest to myself and what I like, like what you just said. If I don't like what I'm doing, I won't do it. It's
mhm,
not because someone said for me to do it or as like say, okay, hey, I'm paying you to do something. I
mhm,
want this done that way. I won't do it because of that. It's not
mhm,
about that for me,
yeah.
right? It's about how I'm feeling when I pick up a block of wood and I could see something that I could create with it. That's what makes me feel good. Is and then and then it brings me back to watching my bros like Wayne Alford and late Bo Dick and and family members like my dad and Henry Speck and them, how I watched them carve and how it made them feel,
Yeah.
and it's like a drum beat.
Mhm,
Like when you walk into a ceremony and you hear,
mhm.
well, looking at that, listening to that same beat, so now my heart and your heart's beating the same because we heard this drum beat, the heartbeat of the drum. So when we're doing that and when we're dancing, you take the energy from you. And then on the second round, I give that energy back to you, to everybody that's watching.
No, that's actually a real thing. I actually read about a
I know it's real because I feel that when I do that. Okay, that's why I'm trying to tell you that's
yeah.
what it makes me feel like. It makes me feel like that when I hear that.
Mhm,
It's like
yeah.
when I'm listening to our cultural music or anybody's cultural music around the world, it makes me feel like I belong there. I belong and part of that somehow.
No, yeah, shared experiences is definitely real. It actually goes back to how we experience things. If we're in the same room or just having a conversation, our brains align. And it's actually been found by science that it does happen, that the neural waves are very similar when we're having a shared experience. So that feeling, it's actually real and there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's incredible with music, with movies, being in a movie theater, watching a movie, that we're all experiencing the same thing. Our brains are activated in the same way.
So when you're in the cultural house, like say for instance, the one that I come from, and if you look it up when you're done with this podcast,
Hmm.
look up Alert Bay Paulatz songs and Paulatz's
Hmm.
ceremonies, and you'll see there's mask dances and songs on there that come from our people. And the next time we talk and you watch that for, tell me how it makes you feel.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I'll tell you how it makes me feel when we're done. Like I tell you, it makes me feel like a kid in a candy store. That's
Yeah.
how it makes me feel. I don't have no bad feelings, sad feelings. or regrets or
Hmm.
anything like that. It's a positive feeling, positive movement for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I just wish I was a kid again because it was a
You,
time that you didn't have
yeah,
any stressors. Everything was
in your
fine.
in your heart,
Hmm.
right? When you close your eyes, that little kid's still there,
Hmm.
right? That's where you go to when you want to be that little young man again. Close your eyes and meditate to your little boy, your inner being.
Hmm. You know,
Nurtures that little boy that you haven't seen for a while.
yeah, I mean, when going back to, when I was a kid, I told you I was not a good student. And when I,
But what about before that? Being a student, what about being that little child, like from 5 to 10? What about that guy?
it was definitely something that was interesting. Um, because even though you had responsibilities with school, your responsibilities then you thought were huge. Looking back at it, it was a time that you felt like you were in Disney World because it was in I would say like imaginary. The responsibilities that one had when they're a kid, they're all imaginary. We still had ups and downs, but it's nothing compared to the experiences that we have now.
Okay, when you talk about ups and downs, it's like living in two worlds.
Hmm.
Eh? And the first world is when I'm living with my family and my grandparents and speaking our language fluently and living that life
Hmm.
as a cultural person, as a native.
Hmm.
And then getting taken away from that world at 5 years old and brought into a world that you don't even know.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're in this big building with all these other children across BC that you've never known or met in your life,
Hmm.
and also don't know how to speak English but have their own language.
Yeah.
And you're all sitting there wondering why we're there. And then how come we're being treated the way we were being treated?
Mm.
And that's what I mean about as a little child, you're living in two worlds, and you're the confusement is why did they put us there
Hmm.
when we already had a world we were living in that was I felt good in.
Yeah.
And I was being with my family, being with my grandparents, being with our family all together, not separated and brought in this building. Felt like I was in jail as a child and sentenced for no reason.
Hmm. Because another thing about being a child is that children are very innocent. So they don't have like a bad bone in their body.
No,
And when bad things happen to them, they don't really know how to respond to it. And they just think that this is just how life is.
yeah, because you're living in that world that all of a sudden you start to believe in it, right? You
Hmm.
believe what you see, you believe what you hear when you're that, as a young 5 year old boy and you hear yourself that you don't amount to nothing, you're just a dog. You
Hmm.
start to, as you're growing older and you hear it until you're 10, 11 years old, you start to believe that you're not worthy of nothing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you get uh, brought out of this building at 13 years old and you're still feeling miserable because of all the bad things that had happened to you while you were in there, so you don't feel comfortable at home. You don't feel comfortable anywhere anymore. You don't feel like you belong.
Hmm.
So again, it goes right back to when you don't feel that way, you start looking at what am I here for? Nobody cares for me. I don't care for me. So why do I want to be here? I mean, but again, it goes right back for me. The love of my great grandparents, my parents, and and I didn't understand what that meant for many years. That what love meant because it's a big word. It means more than one thing. You could love a lot of things. You could, you know, humans,
Hmm.
family, dogs, animals. You know, you could love trees, love
Hmm.
carving. Um, but to understand what love meant in the family, I had to understand what that was. What does love really mean?
Yeah.
And they showed that to me. My great grandparents and my grandparents showed that to me, and my dad. I didn't know my mom until I was 16, 17 years
Oh.
old. So, and I thank her for bringing me to this world. But, and like I say, I meditate to my dad and them lots and thank them for their lessons and that I use today. And it helps because when my kids question me at this house today, when they question me about what I'm doing and why I love doing what I'm doing, is then they'll go, when they're dancing with me, they go, Dad, I want to be a carver. That makes me feel good inside to hear that, right? And I don't push it on them. They just come and they watch me do what I'm doing, and then I'll give them a piece of wood and let them draw on it, paint on it, or if they paint on my carving, that's fine because I can just fix it, and
Hmm.
allow them to be part of it, and like I said, let them be who they are. And then when the time comes, like what my grandparents did to me, you're a young man now. You've got to learn how to do things to learn how to survive.
Yeah. For a child, their world is very small. So the experiences that one has as a child are, important. I know that although my experiences were not like really traumatic, there are still certain things that shape who I became, you know, as you did. And you talk about your children, how they go into the shop, grandchildren, kids, how they want to uh, work on art, and that just shapes who they will become. And you've been working in carving for about 30 years. During that time, what has transpired in your motivations from when you started to now? And do you still hold on to those early influences from a
Yeah,
child?
okay, I'll tell you how this goes for me. Let's go back 20 years. I've known Jordan Peterson,
Hmm.
okay, and I met Jordan Peterson and his family here, actually, right here in Courtney, BC.
Hmm.
I was here. I was living here at that time, and I got invited to this show that's going on, an annual thing that happens here in Courtney
Hmm.
every year. And so I attended. I rented a table and a tent there, and brought my carvings there, and button blankets that Allison Berkshire was making, and she makes really beautiful work, by the way. And yeah, so we brought my stuff there, and that's sitting there, and we're sort of in the very back of the. There's like 30 other tables there and tents, and you had. Uh, I was the only artist there at the time, a
Hmm.
native artist, I meant to say.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's other different stuff there, like candle makers, different kinds of work like that over there. Right? So, anyways, I had very few people come by because I was at the very back. So I brought my dogs, my basset hounds, with me to the show for a couple of days, and they were the ones that attracted mostly the children, right? Because they wanted to
Hmm.
come and pet my dogs. So
Yeah.
that was the way I got people to come to my tent. Was my dogs did it. So, anyways, I seen Dr. Jordan Peterson and his wife Tammy walking up the road. Going back and forth to table, and they finally got up to where I was.
Hmm.
They're looking, hey, we haven't seen this. And they walked in and started looking at my things, and at my carbines and the button blankets that were hanging behind me. And that's the beginning of meeting Dr. Jordan Peterson. And I've gone to Toronto to go visit with them, and it just grew from there. And then I met some other clients through Dr. Jordan Peterson
Hmm.
and grew with them also, and became good friends with a lot of them, and still today talk with them, and it helps me feel good because those people that I'm talking about, they have a positive outlook in life, and
Hmm.
that it gives me strength.
Yeah. It's it's also critical in the friendships that you form because other people could bring you down. Some people could actually uplift you. It goes back into personal relationships. If you're with someone that's always putting you down, it's just not going to be good. But if you're in a group that always is trying to uplift you, uh, always brings good energy, in
Yeah,
essence, you're going to become a better person.
I love that because that's how it makes me feel.
Hmm.
It makes me feel like I always say, like a brand new kid on a block.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It makes me feel good like that. And when I feel good like that, it shows in my work. It shows,
Hmm.
how I approach people too, right? Instead of, feeling upset and, well, what are you doing here? No, it's say, hey, welcome, come on in. Let's talk. Instead of
Hmm.
trying to close the door, right? You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
yeah, it makes me feel good to be around positive, positive feelings and positive people. And there's where I was living in my miserable world for all of
Hmm.
my own little self.
Yeah.
I couldn't see those people for all, like even if they were in front of me, because
Hmm.
of how I was feeling about myself. Even if they were standing right there, I couldn't feel that positive feeling because of what I was going through of my own.
Hmm.
While I started working on that through culture, I could start feeling the good side of me, and I wanted to stay there because it felt good.
Hmm.
And every day I wake up, I look forward to that.
Hmm. You know, the thing with what we experienced also in 2020 with COVID and everyone being separated from each other was very detrimental with mental health because we were forced to be apart from one another. And we didn't receive the same energy, the same positive energy that we all need to push ourselves forward. Would you say that you had like a bad time during that time that everyone was just separated and you couldn't really go see friends or family?
50-50, I guess. The reason why I'm saying that is because the family that I'd lost while I was in with my late wife in Williamsburg
Hmm.
with my family there, I was closer.
Hmm.
I wasn't always in the shop. I was with them now, right? Doing things with them in the house.
Mm.
So it made the family tighter and closer for me,
Hmm.
and to grow with them in that way. But for my family that I left at over here in Courtney and all the way up to Alert Bay and Port Hardy area, I had not seen for 10 years.
Mm.
And and then through that 10-year time, I've lost quite a bit of family members and friends that had passed on.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things is the great thing about having ceremonies is that when you have a ceremony for life and death, you can get caught up with that,
Hmm.
and with the process of grieving and then process of moving forward in life so that you're not feeling stuck with grieving. And that's what I look forward to when I go to the cultural houses so that I could gather strength to move forward in a good way
Yeah.
from all the ones because you don't get to say goodbye at that day. You say it, whether it's a year later or 4 years later, and you still get to do it in a good way. So it becomes a process, and then you're going to be doing it, so you look forward to doing it that way in a cultural way.
Wow. When it comes to building the art that you do, how long does it take you to build like a totem pole? I did see that you had a totem pole. I don't know the height of it. It looked pretty big. How long does it usually take you to build one of these pieces?
I'm not sure which one you've seen, but you may have seen the one that was in Montreal. That's on my website, and it's
Hmm.
now in Winnipeg,
Yeah.
Manitoba. And that one's 55 feet. It's one of the biggest ones I've ever made. And that totem pole talks about adopted children, residential survivors,
Hmm.
and the ones that didn't make it home is all on that pole. That story of that's on there, and plus who I am, and then my stepson James is on there because I put him in there as a part of the White Fox story from the
Hmm.
Northern Friends, and he was on there as a little boy's face because he was the one that took over telling the story back and forth of that pole while I was carving it because he got so good at learning, listening to me tell it over and over when people were coming by.
Yeah.
So after I said, "Son, here's $20. You go tell the story now." And he got good at it, right? So
Hmm.
and I said, "See, now you're part of this pole making." And that's the growth of between James and I and his late sister Oceana
Hmm.
and their late mother. We grew from that totem pole carving, and that one took almost 2 years.
Wow.
Okay, and the one I have in my yard right now is going to be 44 feet tall, and it's 41 feet, and that's been a year, and it shouldn't have taken too much longer now.
Hmm.
But right now, we've had these storms where my tarp had blown right off the whole pole, so I've got it back up, but the pole's so wet I can't. I'm on the process of painting, but you
Hmm.
can't paint when it's already all wet again. So I'm just letting it dry again, and then get back to it. But I've got other projects that I could do while I'm waiting for the pole to re-dry. I don't want to try to like rusty it to dry
Hmm.
because it will just crack, right? So
Yeah.
just let it dry naturally on its own. But yeah, as for it depends on the sizes, right? Like
Hmm.
poles, like a 7 footer that I just sent to Arizona. That pole took maybe just 5 months.
Hmm.
But the thing about me though is that I can't just work on one thing
Hmm.
and stay on that one thing for 5 months. I've got other projects on the side, and I don't want to. how do I put it? So this is why I do that. I guess is because I don't want it to. I don't want to think as it as a job. I want it to still
Mm.
be sort of more on my hobby side, and then as a job, so I don't feel like I'm pressured to work on just one thing. So I do multi things, like I have 4 or 5 things on a go, so that I could
Mhm.
bounce around and just continuously working on something though.
Yeah, because when I was working in marketing, I was doing my own thing. I was working also for this company, so I was doing their work, but I was also having my own work with like some clients, working on a magazine, designing graphics for a magazine. But I was always told what to do when I would submit a job. They always wanted certain things, certain ways, and it was they were paying me, so it was kind of like the job. But I didn't like it because I didn't really have the freedom to create what I wanted to create. So I stopped doing it because even though they were paying me in return, I just didn't like the fact that once I created something, that they would dictate what needed to be on there. So I stopped doing that, and it just gets in the way from something actually being a hobby and being a job. And then when it becomes a job, it does not remain as fun as it once was when you were just doing it for yourself.
That's why it's still my hobby today, 30 years later.
30 years.
So you know, I love what I'm doing. Okay, I love it because it, it it reminds me of when I was a young boy watching my dad, my
Hmm.
grandfather, and Henry Speck Senior, and him carving and painting and
Hmm.
singing and drumming and enjoying their lives as an artist, as a singer, as a dancer, as a teacher. And I never thought I'd be that person. I never
Hmm.
knew what I was going to become, because I had so many things that I wanted to be. I
Hmm.
wanted to be a hunter. I wanted to be a trapper. I wanted to look for gold,
Yeah.
diamonds, stuff like that. I wanted to, even though I'm not good at swimming, I wanted to see what was under the ocean. But
Hmm.
those are things that I would love to have tried as a young man. But it's like I say, I found what I love to do and I stuck to it.
Hmm. And what legacy do you hope to leave?
Um, Hopefully, a, a positive outlook on myself as to trying to learn how to be a better father
Hmm.
to my children, and just to if it helps one father today or anybody, all the power to them.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you and your experiences and how you've been able to deal with those experiences, because I can only imagine trauma after trauma and just being able to push forward and creating incredible pieces of art.
Yeah, I'm going to go on my website, have a look. You'll see a lot of stuff on there, and you'll see up and coming stuff.
Well,
And
Charles Joseph.
Charles Joseph Native Art, www.com.
Great. Thank you for that. And, thank you for coming on the podcast and just sharing your experiences.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, thank you.